Well, hello! Welcome again to another episode of Bedrock Basics, the Badlands, episode number 8. Let's take a quick look at our map behind my back here. Okay, you can see that we extended the fish farm, as I indicated before. We made a little expansion into a lake behind us and knocked down the sand just to give us access to build there. And we got this structure right across the street from the Port Authority. And I call it the Sunrise Inn. Now, what is the Sunrise Inn? Well, really, it's nothing special warehouse that I'm going to build villagers in. So instead of just calling it a cold villager replication facility, no, it's the Sunrise Inn. It's the Sunrise Inn. Yes, it's a beautiful place where newcomers come to my port. It's not just a villager breeding ground. And these trapdoors here, a villager requires a full 2 blocks to be able to walk through. So just by putting that little cosmetic trapdoor in the way, they're not going to exit and run around and get hit by zombies and monsters outside. Out this side door is just a quick little stable area. Hello, subscribe. And there's housing there for 4 horses. And then, of course, next to that, we have just a cosmetic storage facility for animal feed, a bunch of hay bales. Nothing special room, but it really completes the aesthetic that it's an inn with an attached stable. And then, as we spoke about in the last episode where we made a fish farm, we just replicated the fish net on both sides of the ship out at the harbor there, or out off the harbor, I should say. Okay, since we built a villager breeding facility, they're gonna eat. They're gonna eat a lot, and I don't have a farm set up yet to feed the villagers, or even myself. And we're out in the desert, so we're gonna have to build something artificial. Now, this terracotta platform is going to be a storage facility, and we're gonna build a farm coming off of it so that we have a water collection to take all of our crops right into our storage facility. Okay, reclaiming land back from the desert is always fun. So, a bit of an Aztec feel. We're going to make a tiered garden. And important with the tiers is that water will flow continuously from a source point all the way down without being interrupted from beginning to end, because you don't want your crops floating in the middle of nowhere. You want them to make it all the way to your collection point. Perfect. So that'll be the main collection channel, and then feeding into that channel we're going to build a bunch of tiered farms. And by tiered, I mean it's got levels so that similarly water collection will be able to harvest everything all at once for us and save us all kinds of time. So here you can see the basic layout of the tiers. There'll be 4 levels. That's just because of the water collection and channel in the middle. And then off each side is 3 platforms where crops will grow, and they look like that. Now, the hole in each one is to place a water source block, because for efficient crop growing, we're going to have water saturated dirt instead of just regular dry dirt. 4 times 3 is 12 on each side. That's 24 plots. Now, these aren't maximized right out to the 100% most optimum, but by just reducing the size a bit to something easier to manage, it just makes my life easier. And there's so many plots here, it's going to produce more crops than what I'll ever need. And then whatever you build, test it. As you can see, the water will flow all the way down. Okay, so the lengths are correct, but my widths are in question here. This first platform is 7 wide and all the rest are 6 wide. and just the mechanics of water flow. If I put down 2 buckets, that should do it. No, there's a problem. There's a dry spot on each level for 2 buckets. That would mean this would require 3 buckets for 7. Not liking that. Not liking that at all. And that is why we test things. Because if you're gonna make a change, do it now before you do another 100 steps to your build. That would take 3 buckets. And then picking up the water. Oh, it's creating infinite water sources. Yeah. Because every time I turn on the water, I need to turn it off. And an infinite water source issue, oh, that's a problem. So if we reduce it, this is another level, to 6. Okay, 6 wide. 2 buckets at 6 wide. Okay, the other bucket I placed in the corner, if I just move it in 1 square. Perfect. That is what we want. So ease of function is 6 wide. Maximum efficiency on farming could be 8 wide, but then the water sourcing becomes a problem. 6 wide, that's good enough. And the first level at 7 wide, we just make a little adjustment. Because we're proud of our builds, but we're also humble enough to know that we might need some changes. But we'll get there in the end. So just bring it in 1 block. You'll never see the other stuff anyway. And we'll pretty it up a little bit later. Got to get function first, pretty second. And we still have 24 plots that are 6 by 6 minus the water sources. We got lots of crop space. We got these from the trial chambers, which have ample dispensers for all their traps, and we repurpose them here for our farm. The stone buttons we make ourselves, but whip-de-doo, it's just some stone and the crafting table. Super easy to make. Water dispensers, you push the button, turns it on. You push it again, it'll turn it off. And of course, test. Always test. The fences actually work as water barriers, even though you can see through them. Water won't cross through the fences. So if I put water on a higher level, it won't run past the fence. Now, as an editor side note, the fences allow crops to actually sit next to them, and I wind up having to replace it with glass. But that's a troubleshooting problem that we address later. So if the buttons are on the back of all the dispensers, I'm gonna need access to the buttons. So we'll make a walkway, and we'll just make a 2 wide wooden walkway. And I like to use the slabs just because monsters won't spawn on top of a half slab. That block, a monster will spawn on top of it. The half slab, a monster will not spawn on it, and stairs, monsters won't spawn on because it's a partial block as well. So for cosmetic reasons, we'll make sure that the flow looks natural, because I want to just be able to run right through without having to jump or anything else. And then on these blocks, I'll just wind up adding another half slab on top to spawn proof them. Like so. Okay, and then we of course hoe everything, and you'll see some of the tilled land go dark when water saturates. You can see there in the corner when it started, there's another one, and that'll allow crops to grow even faster. And of course cats. Why cats? Because creepers, if they see a cat, they'll run away. So I'll breed a whole bunch of cats and just spread them around to to try to minimize creeper interference with my builds. But for now, we're gonna build the collection point. This whole giant farm only needs one hopper. All the dispensers I got out of the trial chambers, and I want them all to feed into this collection point. I will let the water sources run to that hopper. The hopper will collect everything and throw it into the chest that's attached to. On a side note, previous to just releasing this episode, I put out a short about an obelisk. And for those of you that tune in to me regularly, the answer to the obelisk is north, south, east, and west. It's a direction finder. And this episode's busy with building this farm, but in the next episode I'll show the obelisk next to the Sphinx, which is just a directional landmark. Okay, again, testing, making sure the collection point is at the correct water distance. And then I just sucked it into the collection facility one block further, because there's going to be walls as well. So I don't want the basement to be unaligned with upstairs structure. And you can see above my head there's that terracotta template of a big old circle that I want to build within. Okay, so this all works, but I've got enough space to pull it back one further, and I'm gonna do that. There's gonna be walls above my head, and so I'm just gonna pull the collection point back one more square to give myself just a little bit more space so that when I add upstairs it doesn't look funny with the basement. I'll put storage in the basement and build a windmill structure on top, and that's my template. And there you can see the farm all growing in. For light sources we used jack-o'-lanterns, and I just made the spooky face a direction that you're not going to see, because I want it to be a nice happy farm, not a spooky farm. Okay, and now the main floor or rather the first floor of the windmill, it's just lining the circle of terracotta that we've laid, which will give us a nice orange color for a floor and breaks up the color palette nicely. The basement itself is just going to be a whole bunch of chests and of course the collection point. And a windmill. A windmill's function, like real life function, is to grind wheat and other grains. So let's make a giant grinder. The heart of what a windmill is actually all about. Now in Minecraft it's actually about a big old storage facility that looks pretty, but we're just making a giant grinder at the base of the building. And the whole reason why old windmills had giant fans to harness the power of wind and turn things was to turn this giant mill, which was giant stones that would grind wheat and other crops into flour and other components that were used. Entire countries' economies were based off these things once upon a time. So historically pretty important to have a grindstone. There we go. Something appropriately sized for the size of the build. No function at all other than, hey, it looks pretty. There we go. And then the giant fans of the windmill actually exist just to generate power to turn the giant grinding stones. And that's my 30-second history of what windmills are really about. So back to the Minecraft use. We got a pretty little centerpiece, shaft up top, and we're going to change that shaft with smooth basalt. I saw that wonderful, wonderful builder, BOO, talking and using smooth basalt for some other builds. And the thing about it is it's got horizontal lines that run up and down it, and gives it the illusion, well, emphasizes the illusion that it's a shaft. And you'll see on the finished build, I think it was the right block choice for the shafts that drive the grindstone. Okay, just a whole bunch of chests for storage, because this farm is going to produce a whole lot of stuff. And being the #1 food storage for a mega city, well, it's got to have more than one chest. And these big old empty spaces, we're just going to put in some aesthetic structural support. Because even though blocks can float in midair, it just doesn't feel right. So we're going to pretty it up. And this frickin' staircase is just not quite in the right spot. And the obsessive perfectionist part of me, well, not much of a perfectionist, but it's just not right. And if I don't change it, it's gonna bug me. It's gonna bug me every time I come in here. So only one thing to do, and that's move it. Figure out where we need the walls first, because I don't want to move it twice. Okay, misalign it. It's right there. Yeah, that's the spot. Okay, so the staircase just has to really come over one square, maybe back a square as well. So I'll take out the old. Structure line in. Just happily working away on the farm. I love the creative freedom that Minecraft gives you. If you can imagine it, you can do it. And if it doesn't come out right, don't be afraid to knock it down and build some more. Move the torch out a bit. Definitely have to light it up though. Monsters suck. With the worst one being the creeper. So frustrating once you build stuff and then 2 hours later a creeper comes along and goes, guess what? You gotta fix this. Okay. Just checking out how much walkway space I've got. Bring it back one. Yeah. That'll fit nicely. And there we go. Staircase just got moved over one. You can see the lines on the smooth basalt too. They really help that brings the eye straight up and down for the shaft. And it just looks right. Just build a quick collar for the illusion of additional structure support. And then we'll just throw a safety railing on top of it when we're done because, well, I fall a lot. Okay, first floor is almost done. We'll have to thicken up these walls and put some kind of barrier in between the posts. I don't want it just to be stone because then it'll make it quite dark and depressing. The natural light I find actually brightens things up the best. Plus you get a little bit of a sneak peek of the view outside. There's only one door in and out of this one. Sometimes I make multiple, but for today, there's one door into this. That's our first floor. We just walled it up and used fences for what essentially looks like a barred window. For a pallet, I'm using stone bricks and jungle wood. I recommend not using more than 3 types for pallets. Other people have different opinions, but if you use too many different types, the color becomes overwhelming to the brain, and then you wind up getting things that feel noisy. Simple is often better. It also makes it look more purposeful when you use consistent blocks, not just what was lying around for an insane clown party or something. So second floor is going to be access to the windmill apparatus, the main power structure. It's going to be the drive shaft going up, and I've already planned out the fans and the blades that go onto the windmill itself, which are essentially 12 or 13 blocks long. That means that this shaft that I just built had to be 15 blocks, well, more than 13 blocks high above the ground level. And I like, again, using my coordinates to guide me along. If the ground level is 63 and then I added 15, then I've got to make the height 78, but this wasn't done at 63. This was on top of a hill at height 80, so 95 makes it 15 blocks high, blah blah blah. Math is good, but now by making it this high, the blades aren't going to hit the ground. It would be horrible to start putting the windmill blades out and having them run into the dirt, because that would just look stupid. So everywhere there's a joint, I put these polished black deep slate, and the essential point right at the center I will change later on. And now for the giant fans that are on one end of the windmill, I like to put a counterbalance on the other end. The juncture where the shaft goes through the wall of the windmill, I also just close off with what essentially looks like a seal. And I don't want a shaft that's going to go out like 100 blocks and then have a fan on the end of it. That'll look silly. So I keep the shaft as short as possible, but still clearing the structures below. And thankfully, because I made a tiered farm, I've actually got a little bit of a depression in the ground. So if I screw up, I've got a little bit of wiggle room to make it look okay. But because I did my math, the structure should be fine. The windmill apparatus is in place. I'm just essentially housing it, putting a shell around it and a roof on top of that. And for roofing, I'm using my third pallet block, and that's going to just be spruce. You may see in the background I've got spruce trees and jungle trees growing. I'm consistently going to use those trees as my wood sources for building in this area. If I was in an acacia forest, I would use acacia. I really think that the building materials should reflect the resources that are around them. Even though there's no trees in the desert, this is my consistent palette. Okay, once it's all in place, I'll give you a quick look at what it all looks like, but in the meantime, you're just getting glimpses of what's going on. Again, like the walkway, I'm putting slabs on the roof just to make sure that spiders or other monsters don't spawn on top. The other option would be to put lighting sources all up here, but I didn't want torches in the middle of a building in the middle of nowhere, so I like the slabs to keep the mob spawning issue under control. Okay, that is essentially the housing around the windmill apparatus. and I don't like the solid wooden wall. We're gonna have to cosmetically change that, and I think I'm just gonna punch some decorated glass into it. So moving to the interior, don't like squares too much, and we try to soften it by rounding off the corner edges. And then I got those giant wooden blank walls on the side. Not liking it, and it's also a bit dark. So we'll punch some holes in. That'll brighten it up and give you a view of the surrounding scenery. But we can't have a giant open hole, so we'll close it off with glass. The other thing that's really going to tie this this build in with the other ones is the colors I'm going to try to use are again going to be blue and yellow. Okay, this is the maintenance area for the windmill apparatus, so we put some catwalks around, well, not touching the apparatus itself to keep it clear. Just going to use an alternating checker pattern of blue and yellow here. Stained glass. Now keep in mind that if you make a mistake, you need silk touch to pick up your glass panes, otherwise you're just going to smash them into non-existence. I started at the center of the building, and then I'll do the two sides last because I just want them to flow naturally with the blue-yellow alternating pattern, which I'll continue on right in the next panel. Plus I've got my handy-dandy catwalks to get there. There we go, yellow, blue, yellow, blue. Why yellow, blue? Sweden, baby. There we go. So now it's completely enclosed, free from the elements, which don't really exist in Minecraft, but hey, in our pretend world they do. And you can see we got a catwalk running around it, and the counterbalance and apparatus are sitting there. It also gives us a pretty good view on the outside. I like it. And then we just you can see on the counterbalance we just cog slapped a couple of green grates to help give it a more rounded look. Okay, moving on to the fans on the outside of the windmill, because right now it doesn't look like a windmill until it has its iconic giant fans to harness the power of the wind. Okay. Giving credit where credit is due, I have to say that DiddiHD, and I'll put his link down in the description. When I saw his build on YouTube, the fans here, just this component of the windmill, it really resonated for me, and it's like, yeah, that I'm going to borrow onto my own build. So I'll put a link to his build for people to follow down below, and he gives a really good tutorial on a step-by-step on how to build it. For this episode, I'll give you the much abbreviated version. So basically we're going to put a stair, and then 2 blocks, and then a stair, and then 2 blocks, and keep repeating that 6 times. And then each time it goes up is increasing by 2 plus the initial one plus 1 on the end, so it's going to be like 14 blocks total. And we gave us 15 above the height of the hill, plus we have some extra space down below because the farms themselves are actually depressed into the ground, so it's going to fit fine. And then on top of that, you can see there the structure itself, we're going for the illusion of movement, which is a little tricky to do with squares, but this pulls it off pretty nicely. On the insides of each of the windmill arms, we put fences. And again, we're using spruce wood for this component. And then the sails themselves, which are going to line in 2 layers. The first layer hugs the fences quite closely with a little bit of a ball on the end. And again, we're going to use the Swedish Viking colors of yellow and blue. Go Mojang! Once I get all these cosmetic builds and we get into the fancy mythology-based ones, for me it's going to be a lot more fun, and I'll share some stories. Because I really think that Minecraft is based off of Mojang, whether they're consciously or subconsciously doing it. There's a big Norse influence in them, and I'll share that with my future builds. So these fans, using cubes to trick the eye into think that there's movement going on, we're going to put them in 2 layers, and we'll give you a distance view of what this looks like. Oh, that's too low, because we want the underside to flow and the upper side to furl. Flow and furl. And again, by using asymmetry, as I discussed in a previous episode, it tricks the eye into thinking that there's movement, because the brain's trying to make sense of what it's seeing. A little bit of a trim here. And there we go. That's 1 fan and a half fan on each of the others. And you can see that it has a textured, layered look, which makes the brain, when it sees a pattern happening like that, it makes you think something's moving. Which is pretty good considering we're using nothing but cubes. On the edge with a little bit of dark, and there we go. That's the fan for the windmill. To me, it makes one heck of a pretty storage facility for a whole bunch of food chests. I like it. And the colors, of course, tie it all together. Little bit of last touch on the interior is we have our nil apparatus from the drive fan down to the grinding stone, but to me it's just floating in the middle there. So we're putting in some cosmetic structural support to make it look as if it's a strong, sturdy, well-rooted, controlled apparatus. It's not going to teeter-totter, fall down, and the whole thing kill all the workers inside. No. There we go. We got our catwalk, our structural support, and our very clear lines on which way the shafts are going. Well, that brings us to the end. So again, please comment, like, and subscribe the video. Thank you for joining me. And next, we can get those villagers to work. Bye-bye.